The bullet cracked the silence of Dusty Creek's main street as Sheriff Wade Hollister holstered his smoking gun with a satisfied smirk, standing over the crumpled form of a young woman whose blood now stained the dry Arizona dirt. She asked for it, he declared to the horrified onlookers, only to freeze when the cold press of steel touched the back of his neck and the low, dangerous voice of Gabriel Xavier responded, "Ask me again. I'll answer with my gun." The year was 1875, and Dusty Creek had once been a peaceful settlement in the Arizona Territory until Sheriff Hollister's iron-fisted rule had corrupted it to the core. Gabriel Xavier, known to most simply as Gabe, had returned to find his hometown unrecognizable after 5 years riding with various cattle outfits across the West. The woman bleeding in the street was Sophia Carter, the schoolteacher who had dared to publicly challenge the sheriff's latest land grab. "Step away from her," Gabe commanded, his voice carrying the hard edge of a man who'd seen too much violence to be intimidated. His weathered Stetson shaded piercing blue eyes that never left the sheriff as he knelt beside Sophia. "You're making a mistake, Xavier," Hollister growled. "That woman's been stirring up trouble since she arrived, questioning my authority. The town council's decisions. Funny how the town council seems to do exactly what you tell them these days," Gabe replied, checking Sophia's pulse. Relief washed over him when he felt the weak but steady thrumming beneath his fingertips. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, painful but not fatal. Sophia's eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of summer sage. "You came back," she whispered, recognition dawning despite the pain. They'd been childhood friends before he'd left town, though she'd been just 14 to a 17 then. "Didn't expect a welcome quite like this," Gabe said softly before turning his attention back to Hollister. "This ends now. You shot an unarmed woman in broad daylight." "She was reaching for something," Hollister protested, though the lie rang hollow to the gathered crowd. Dr. Howard pushed through the onlookers, his medical bag in hand. "Let me see her," he demanded, kneeling in the dirt without concern for his suit. "Get her to my office," the doctor ordered after a quick examination. The bullet tore through muscle, but missed anything vital. "She'll need stitches and rest." Gabe holstered his gun and carefully lifted Sophia into his arms, her slender frame surprisingly light against his chest. "This isn't over, Hollister," he promised as he carried her toward the doctor's office. "You threatening an officer of the law, boy," the sheriff called after him. Gabe didn't answer. He didn't need to. The cold fury in his eyes had said enough. Sophia's breath came in short gasps as Gabe carried her down the wooden sidewalk. The deed records, she managed between waves of pain. "I found proof. The Wilkinson farm. The Cooper place. He's been forging documents." "Save your strength," Gabe urged. "You can tell me everything once the docs patched you up." The doctor's office smelled of carbolic acid and medicinal herbs. Dr. Howard directed Gabe to place Sophia on the examination table before shooing him out to the waiting area. "I'll need to remove her dress to properly treat the wound." Gabe paced the small waiting room like a caged mountain lion, his spurs jingling with each turn. He'd come home to settle down, maybe start a ranch of his own with the money he'd saved, not to get involved in whatever corruption had taken root in Dusty Creek. Yet here he was, already at odds with the law before he'd been back a full day. Mrs. Sullivan, the midwife who often assisted Dr. Howard, arrived shortly after and disappeared into the examination room. Almost an hour passed before she emerged. "She's asking for you," Mrs. Sullivan said, her face pinched with worry. "The wound is clean, but she's lost blood and has a fever starting. The doctor's given her laudanum for the pain." Gabe found Sophia propped up on pillows, her face pale as fresh linen. Her chestnut hair had been loosened from its pins and cascaded around her shoulders. She looked both fragile and determined in equal measure. "You're staring," she said, a weak smile touching her lips. "Hardly recognized you," Gabe admitted. "Last time I saw you, you were just a kid with braids and freckles." And you were the boy everyone expected would never amount to much, she countered. Yeah, here you are, playing hero. Hardly a hero, Gabe said, taking a seat beside her bed. Just couldn't stomach watching Hollister gun down a woman in the street. What happened, Sophia? What's become of this town? Despite her weakened state, fire flashed in her eyes. Hollister happened. 3 years ago, Mayor Baldwin died suddenly. Heart attack, they said, though some whispered otherwise. Hollister convinced the town council to appoint him sheriff. Since then, he's been systematically taking over. Homesteaders who won't sell find themselves accused of crimes, run out of town, or worse. Her voice dropped. The Coopers' farm burned last month. Their bodies were found in the ashes. Gabe's jaw tightened. And you've been investigating. I came back last year to teach. My parents died, left me their house. She winced as pain shot through her shoulder. The schoolhouse overlooks the county clerk's office. I started noticing Hollister and his deputy, Randall, visiting after hours. Documents disappearing, new ones appearing. That's why he shot you? Over some paperwork. Sophia's fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. I confronted him this morning. Told him I knew what he was doing and had copies of the original deeds. Said I'd sent them to the territorial marshal in Tucson. Did you? Her eyes met his. No. I didn't trust the mail. The copies are hidden in my house, under the loose floorboard in my parents' bedroom. Gabe whistled low. No wonder he was eager to put a bullet in you. He'll come for them, she said urgently. And he'll come to finish what he started with me. He can't risk me testifying. I won't let that happen, Gabe promised, his voice low and determined. Rest now. I'll handle this. Why would you? She asked, fighting to keep her eyes open as the laudanum took effect. You don't even know me anymore. Gabe stood, adjusting his gun belt. I know enough. I know you're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. That's reason enough for me. As he reached the door, her soft voice stopped him. Gabriel? Thank you. He nodded once and stepped out into the fading afternoon light. First, he needed to retrieve those documents. Then, he had a sheriff to deal with. The Carter house sat on the edge of town, a modest white clapboard structure with blue shutters and a small porch. Gabe approached cautiously, alert for any sign of Hollister or his men. Finding none, he slipped around to the back door, which yielded to his lock-picking skills a questionable talent he'd acquired during leaner times. The interior was neat and feminine, with touches that spoke of Sophia's character bookshelves overflowing with volumes, a half-finished embroidery project beside a comfortable chair, wildflowers in a simple vase on the dining table. Gabe moved to the main bedroom, located the loose floorboard Sophia had described, and retrieved a packet of documents wrapped in oilcloth. Even to his untrained eye, the forgeries were evident when compared to the originals. Hollister had been systematic, altering records to show he'd legally purchased properties that had been in families for generations. Tucking the papers inside his vest, Gabe was preparing to leave when the creak of the front porch step froze him in place. Drawing his revolver, he pressed himself against the wall beside the bedroom door. Check upstairs, came the sheriff's voice. Randall, take the back. She must have the papers somewhere in this house. Gabe weighed his options. The bedroom window was too small for a quick escape, and he could hear footsteps approaching the back door where he'd entered. Fighting his way out would mean shooting lawmen, corrupt though they might be, and potentially becoming a wanted man himself. Instead, he holstered his gun and stepped out into the hallway, hands raised. Evening, Sheriff. Fancy meeting you here. Hollister's hand dropped to his gun, but he didn't draw. Xavier. Breaking and entering now? That's a serious offense. Not as serious as shooting an unarmed woman, Gabe replied evenly. Or forging property deeds. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. I don't know what nonsense that schoolmarm's been feeding you, but she's confused. Probably delirious from her injury. Interesting theory, Gabe said. The documents I just found tell a different story. Hand them over, Xavier, Hollister demanded, his hand tightening on his gun grip. I think I'll hold on to them. The territorial marshal might find them interesting reading. The front door burst open as Deputy Randall entered, his gun already drawn. Found something, Sheriff? Our friend Xavier here has been helping himself to private property, Hollister said, finally drawing his revolver. Search him. Gabe remained still as Randall approached, knowing resistance now would only end with bullets. The deputy roughly patted him down, finding and removing the packet of documents from his vest. Got 'em, Sheriff, Randall announced triumphantly. Good, Hollister said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Now we just need to deal with our burglar here. And then finish what we started with Miss Carter. Gabe's muscles tensed. You really think you can kill us both and get away with it? People saw you shoot her in broad daylight. People saw a dangerous woman reach for a weapon and get shot in self-defense, Hollister corrected. And they'll see a drifter who attacked a sheriff being justly killed while resisting arrest. It's amazing what people will believe when they're scared. You're forgetting something, Hollister, Gabe said calmly. What's that? I'm not as easy to kill as you think. With a sudden movement, Gabe kicked the oil lamp on the nearby table, sending it crashing to the floor. Flames immediately spread across the rug as he ducked behind the solid oak sideboard. Gunshots exploded, wood splintering above his head as he drew his own revolver. Smoke filled the room quickly, providing the cover Gabe needed. He fired twice, hearing a yelp as one bullet found Deputy Randall's leg. Hollister continued firing blindly into the smoke, his bullets embedding themselves in furniture and walls. Gabe crawled toward the kitchen, keeping low beneath the thickening smoke. The fire was spreading faster than he'd anticipated, climbing the curtains and licking at the wooden walls. He needed to get out, but more importantly, he needed those documents. He spotted them on the floor where Randall had dropped them when hit. Lunging forward, Gabe snatched the packet and made for the back door, staying low to avoid both bullets and smoke. Outside, he gulped fresh air, the sounds of shouting and confusion coming from the front of the house. The documents were safe, but the house Sophia's only inheritance was rapidly becoming engulfed in flames. With no time to dwell on that loss, Gabe circled toward the stables behind Dr. Howard's office. He needed to get Sophia somewhere safe before Hollister regrouped. Dr. Howard was emerging from the back door of his office when Gabe arrived. What in God's name is happening? There's a fire at the Carter place. Hollister, Gabe explained tersely. Is Sophia well enough to travel? She's not safe here. The doctor hesitated. She's weak, but the wound is clean. Moving her risks opening it again, but staying risks worse, Gabe finished. Help me get her ready. Sophia was already struggling to sit up when they entered, alarmed by the commotion outside. What's happening? Is that smoke I smell? Hollister was waiting at your house, Gabe explained, helping her to her feet. I got the documents, but there was a fight. The house caught fire. Pain flashed across her face that had nothing to do with her wound. My parents' home. I'm sorry, Gabe said softly, but we need to leave.
Now.
Hollister won't stop. Dr. Howard hurriedly gathered bandages and medicine. Where will you take her? Better you don't know, Gabe replied. Saddle your strongest horse, document. One that can carry double. Within minutes, Sophia was wrapped in a blanket, seated in front of Gabe on the doctor's sturdy roan gelding. Her face was pale with pain and fever, but determination kept her upright. Hold tight, Gabe murmured as they rode out the back way, avoiding the main street where townspeople had gathered to fight the fire. They rode through the night, Gabe keeping to trails he remembered from his youth, places where the rocky ground would leave no tracks. Sophia remained silent, conserving her strength, occasionally leaning back against his chest when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Dawn found them at a small line shack Gabe knew from his days working cattle for the Bar M Ranch. It was basic, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough plank bed, and few amenities, but it was shelter, and far from anywhere Hollister would think to look. "Rest here," Gabe said, helping Sophia onto the narrow bed. "I'll get a fire going." Despite her weakened state, Sophia's eyes remained sharp. "We can't stay here indefinitely, Gabriel." "We won't," he assured her, striking a match to the kindling he'd gathered. "Just until you're stronger. Then we'll head to Tucson. Take these documents to the territorial marshal." "And then what?" she asked quietly. "Hollister has powerful friends. Even if the marshal acts on the evidence, there will be a trial. I'll have to testify." Gabe poured water from his canteen into a battered coffee pot. "One problem at a time, Sophia. First you heal. Then we deal with Hollister." She watched him move efficiently around the small cabin, this man who'd stepped between her and death without hesitation. "Why did you really come back to Dusty Creek?" His hands paused in their work. "Wanted to put down roots. Maybe start a small ranch. I've been drifting long enough. And now you're on the run with a wounded schoolteacher and a price on your head." A half smile touched his lips. "Not exactly how I planned my homecoming." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be." Hollister would have shown his true colors eventually. Better to face him now than let him steal more lives. The next 3 days passed in a rhythm of caretaking and watchfulness. Gabe hunted, redressed Sophia's wound with supplies Dr. Howard had provided, and took turns standing guard. Sophia's fever broke on the second day, and color gradually returned to her cheeks. On the evening of the third day, as they shared a simple meal of rabbit stew, the conversation turned personal. "I remember when you left town," Sophia said, setting aside her empty bowl. "All the girls were heartbroken. Gabriel Xavier, the wild one with the fast horse and faster smile, riding off to seek his fortune." Gabe chuckled. "Seems like another lifetime. I was just a kid with big dreams and no plan." "And what did you find out there?" His expression sobered. "That the world's bigger and harder than I imagined. Did some things I'm not proud of. Worked cattle drives, tried my hand at prospecting, even rode shotgun for Wells Fargo for a spell. And now I know what matters," he said simply. "A place to belong. People worth fighting for." Their eyes met across the small fire, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had expected to develop in the midst of danger. The moment was broken by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Gabe was instantly alert, moving to the window. "Riders," he said grimly. "At least 3, maybe 4. Sophia struggled to her feet. "Hollister." "Can't tell yet. But we need to move." He quickly gathered their meager supplies, helping Sophia into her coat. "There's a narrow ravine behind the cabin. If we can reach it, we can follow it to higher ground." They slipped out the back door just as the riders came into view. Hollister, Deputy Randall with his leg bandaged, and 2 men Gabe didn't recognize. Mercenaries, most likely, hired to do the sheriff's dirty work. "This way," Gabe whispered, supporting Sophia as they made their way through the scrub brush toward the ravine. The horse was tethered on the far side, hidden from view of the approaching men. They'd almost reached the ravine when Sophia stumbled, a small cry of pain escaping her lips as her injured shoulder hit a rock. The sound carried in the still evening air. "There!" came Hollister's shout. Behind the cabin, gunfire erupted, bullets whizzing past them and kicking up dirt at their feet. Gabe pushed Sophia ahead of him, shielding her with his body as they scrambled down into the ravine. "Go to the horse," he ordered, drawing his revolver. "I'll hold them off." "I won't leave you," she protested. "Not asking you to. Just get to higher ground. I'll be right behind you." Reluctantly, Sophia moved ahead while Gabe took position behind a boulder. Hollister and his men had dismounted and were approaching cautiously, spreading out to surround the ravine. Gabe waited until Deputy Randall appeared at the edge, then fired. The shot caught the deputy in the chest, sending him tumbling down the ravine slope. One of the hired guns returned fire, the bullet chipping stone near Gabe's head. Moving quickly from cover to cover, Gabe worked his way up the ravine, firing sparingly to conserve ammunition. He could see Sophia ahead, having reached the horse and now struggling to untie it one-handed. A bullet tore through the sleeve of his coat, grazing his arm. Gabe hissed in pain but kept moving. Another of Hollister's men appeared on the ridge above, taking aim at Sophia. Gabe's shot caught the man in the shoulder, spinning him around. But the distraction cost him. Sheriff Hollister himself appeared from behind a boulder, gun raised. "End of the line, Xavier," Hollister called. "Throw down your gun, and maybe the lady lives." "Don't listen to him, Gabriel," Sophia shouted, finally freeing the horse. Gabe calculated his options. His position was exposed, Hollister had the high ground, and he had only 2 bullets left. "Last chance," Hollister said, cocking his revolver. "All right," Gabe called, slowly raising his hands. "Just don't hurt her."
"Smart man," Hollister smirked, stepping closer.
"Now toss that gun over here." Instead of complying, Gabe suddenly dropped and rolled as a gunshot exploded not from Hollister's weapon, but from behind Gabe. Hollister jerked backward, a look of surprise on his face as blood blossomed on his chest. Gabe whirled to see Sophia standing 20 yards away, Dr. Howard's small derringer smoking in her hand. "He wasn't going to let either of us live," she said, her voice remarkably steady. The remaining hired gun, seeing his employer fall, quickly disappeared over the ridge. Gabe approached Hollister's body cautiously, kicking away the sheriff's gun. The man was dead, his eyes staring sightlessly at the darkening sky. "Are you all right?" he asked Sophia, who had lowered the small gun, her face pale but composed. "I've never killed anyone before," she said quietly. Gabe gently took the derringer from her trembling fingers. "You saved my life." "We saved each other," she corrected. "What now?" "Now we still head to Tucson," Gabe decided. With Hollister dead and these documents as evidence, the territorial marshal can sort out the rest. 2 weeks later, they returned to Dusty Creek. The territorial marshal had taken their evidence and statements seriously, dispatching deputies to investigate. What they uncovered went beyond even Sophia's discoveries, a network of corruption that had allowed Hollister to steal land across the territory. The town welcomed them as heroes, though Sophia found such attention uncomfortable. "I'm just a schoolteacher," she protested when the new mayor suggested a celebration in their honor. "You're a lot more than that," Gabe told her as they stood on the newly rebuilt porch of her house. The townspeople had come together to replace what had been lost in the fire, an act of community that gave Sophia hope for Dusty Creek's future. "What will you do now?" she asked, watching as the sunset painted the distant mountains gold and crimson. "Still planning to start that ranch?" Gabe leaned against the porch railing, studying her face. The past weeks had changed them both. Danger and shared purpose had forged a connection neither had expected. "Thought I might," he said carefully. "There's good land north of town. The barroom owner is willing to sell a parcel." "It would suit you," Sophia agreed, trying to ignore the pang in her heart at the thought of him settling somewhere beyond her daily orbit. "Thing is," Gabe continued, moving closer, "a ranch needs more than just cattle and horses. Needs a heart. A home." Sophia's breath caught as he took her hand. "Gabriel, I'm not much good with fancy words," he admitted. "But I know what I want now. Who I want. If you'll have me." "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" she whispered. "I'm asking if the schoolteacher might consider sharing her life with an ex-drifter who's finally found where he belongs," Gabe said, his blue eyes earnest. "I'm asking if you might love me half as much as I've come to love you." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as she stepped into his embrace. "I think I've been waiting for you to come back since the day you left," she confessed. "Even when I was too young to understand what that meant." Their lips met in a kiss that held both tenderness and promise, the first of many they would share in the years to come. 6 months later, they were married in the small church on Dusty Creek's main street. Sophia continued teaching, though now she rode to and from the schoolhouse on a gentle mare Gabe had trained especially for her. Their ranch grew slowly but steadily, becoming known for both its quality cattle and the warm welcome visitors received. The bullet scar on Sophia's shoulder faded with time, but never disappeared completely, a reminder of how fragile life could be and how precious. Sometimes in the dark of night, she still dreamed of Hollister's face in that final moment, but Gabe was always there to hold her, to whisper that she was safe, that they were safe together. On their first anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset, Sophia placed Gabe's hand over her stomach with a smile. "A new chapter," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Gabe's face transformed with wonder and joy. "With you? I'm ready for anything." And in that moment, with the promise of new life growing between them and the hard-won peace they'd created, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the schoolteacher and the cowboy who had found in each other the courage to stand against injustice and the strength to build a future bright with possibility.